Hi guys, everyone. You're listening to The Earful Tower, which is brought to you by French Today, the audiobooks that'll help you speak French like a French person. And believe it or not, I've got Camille here with me today, and we're going to talk about hacks to learning French. Are you there, Camille?
Oui, je suis là. Bonjour, Oliver.
Bonjour, ça va?
Ouais, ça va et toi?
Toujours en forme. I love that. Do you like that one? En forme?
Ouais, toujours en forme, c'est super.
That's one of my favorites. But you before we even get into today's topic, you brought up something that I like. You know how you say je suis là?
Oui.
When people are learning French, they might think that means I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
But it means I'm here and there?
Yeah, it's weird. You just have idioms from time to time. It would make more sense to say je suis ici, but that's not what we say.
No one says
we
that.
say je suis là. No, nobody says je suis ici. We say je suis là. Why? I don't know.
It's one of those little mysteries. It sounds nicer though, je suis là. Je suis là. Je suis là.
You know what? Yeah, I think that's it. It's much easier to say, and very often the language is influenced by what's easy on the tongue, and it's much easier to say je suis là than je suis ici.
You know, have I told you the story about when me and a French friend were about to meet one night somewhere, and he was on one end of a street and I was on the other end of the street, and he was speaking English and he translated literally, and he said he wanted me to come to him, you know?
Okay.
But he wrote there instead of here. He got it mixed up, you know? And we both just stood on the other end of the street waiting for like 10 minutes before we called each other again, both irritated with each other. Je suis là. I think he's like, I'll come là. And anyway.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah.
But we're here to talk about this idea of learning French quicker.
Yes.
Which is something that maybe is possible. Do you think?
Yeah, well, define quicker.
Well, put it this way. Imagine you're a beginner in French and you're looking at this mountainous language that's so deep and rich and full of big words and complicated phrases and tenses and conjugations. And you're thinking, by God, I want to learn this quickly. What would you say to that person? Would you say it's impossible, my friend? Or would you say, well, let's do it?
I would say the first thing you need to do is figure out why you want to learn French. So, because there's a lot of different people listening out there, and there are many reasons to learn French. Okay, so for example, typically there are many people who are in school who are, wanting to pass a French exam. Maybe it is to move in a French country, or maybe it's just they're in school and they have to get a grade. Okay. They're going to have very different reason to learn French and very different needs than somebody who's learning French for pleasure because they might travel to France and want to be able to order a coffee in France. So I agree with you as a beginner, and especially as an English-speaking beginner, and I'll tell you why I say that later. You have this mountain, okay? You have all these conjugation, which are usually the first thing that books, throw at you, how to conjugate your verb in the present, the past, and so on. But I really, really think that when you start your French journey, there's a little bit of introspection that's very healthy. Why do you want to learn French? Okay? If it is to go to France and communicate in French, or just communicate with your French friends, or just because you want to learn the language for yourself, do you really need to know all these tenses right away? Is it your priority?
And the answer is no. I reckon.
For me, if I were that student, yeah, the answer would be no. I don't need to know passé simple right away, okay?
Yeah.
If you are reading French, if you are into French literature, there's a lot of people whose goal in life would be to be able to read a famous French author in the text in French. Then yes, passé simple, super useful. You're going to run into it all the time.
Is the passé simple the one where you got words like FUT?
Yes, je fus. Yeah. Or il fut in that case.
I remember when I first read a French book, and I spoke all right French at the time, like just beginner I suppose. But I opened a book and the first sentence had that word, and I was like, what the hell is that word?
Absolutely, and my daughter is 14, and that's what they are learning in school right now. See, that's how a priority it is even to us French speaker. Okay, it's a tense that is used only in literature, and it's beautiful, it's fancy, it's but it goes crazy. It's the one also that says vous pute, which sounds like whore. I'm sorry, but it's the verb pouvoir at the vous form, and so everybody cracks up laughing. It's a tense that should not be on your priority list as a beginner.
Do we have it in English? Do we have the same tense in English?
Well, you know what? I don't think so. It's the passé simple is a tense that is specially for French literature, and I don't think you have something that specific. The equivalent in spoken French, more or less, would be passé composé, which is like j'ai regardé, j'ai chanté, je suis allé. So this, yes, we use a lot. But again, as a beginner, we were saying, there's something that's really important is that you need to prioritize. You can't look at Kilimanjaro and go poof to the top directly. It's
as lovely as that would be.
It's gonna be a journey, but a lot of people seem to be just following, the winding path or start with, really difficult things. And it doesn't need to be that difficult. And I really believe that in French, you can have fast results that bring you a lot of joy and a feeling of accomplishment. You just need to do a little bit of research before you start.
I love your approach because it's exactly opposite to what a lot of the French teachers I had when I was younger did. And one thing I remember really clearly, I was in sort of towards the end of high school, and we had a French teacher, and I suppose they all do in all high schools everywhere, but they focused on really complicated stuff, trying to give us things to test, to test if we could remember how to do these weird tenses and everything. So we're learning all these tenses. And then one day I passed him in the corridor at school, and he said a version of hello, how are you in French. So it could have been something a little bit beyond, ça va, something like tu vas bien or something like that. And I just looked at him and I was like, I don't know what you just said. I got no idea what you said. And then I thought, why are we learning these subjunctive tenses when I can't even respond to how are you yet? You know what I mean?
It's a real problem. It's a real problem because abroad, it's not the real French language that's taught. It's an idea, an ideal of French. Like it's French for the elite, for the scholars. It's beautiful French. Don't get me wrong. It's French literature, French poetry, and so on. But it's not practical French, and it's something that is changing right now. I'm very happy to report that actually a lot of teachers are coming to me and to FrenchToday.com and, telling me, I have this class, I'm not super happy with the books that I have, and I would like to follow your approach, and I would like to complement, not compliment.
Maybe they want to compliment.
Maybe they want to
well,
compliment.
Camille,
I will take that compliment, but compliment my the curriculum, which is imposed by the school, which is imposed by I don't know who imposed the French test, but they are done a certain way, and you need to pass them. And to pass them, you need to know these tense and these rules, and they're going to trick you and so on. So the poor teacher often has no choice. They have to follow the program. Yet they come to me and French Today to get something to teach real French to their students. And they tell me, I just want to do all my French class with your material because everybody's having so much fun and everybody's feeling that they can really progress. And now that the younger generation, they have access to the entire world with all these, Snapchat and Instagram and all that. So my daughter, again, 14 years old, she has many, many friends in the US. Well, she's bilingual, so it's a little bit different for her. But she has many occasions to speak with people from all over the world. And I have one of her friends is actually learning with my audiobooks. And it's great. And he's saying, wow, finally, I can say some useful sentences and I'm learning something else than, the subjunctive again. That's our worst enemy, I think, the subjunctive. Yeah.
I think so too. And I feel like for anyone who's listening to the show for the first time and has no idea about what your audiobooks are, they're not just like a high school French lesson made into an audiobook. No. It's more of a journey. It's more of a climb to the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro together with the voice of Camille. Just so if you are new here and you've never heard before what's going on, these audiobooks, if you don't mind me saying, Camille, if you don't mind me telling your work to the world, it's you go through a story and you're repeating things, and at the end you get study guides and you're learning new words rather than what's it called, rote learning, where they just give you 50 different conjugations of a verb and you're meant to try and remember them the same way that you remember your times tables. No, sir. That's not what we're doing here. Is that a fair?
Absolutely. It's true that there's a story, there's a novel that illustrates all the points of grammar, and this novel is really evolving because, I don't want to ruin the surprise for you, Oliver, but at the end of the series, you will have followed the character over 20 years of their life. So, so it starts, we start when they're teenagers and the conversations are really, what every tourist is going to encounter and run into, talking about yourself, school, buying things, going to a restaurant and asking for directions, all the basic things.
By the way, that's what I focused on in a recent episode was the ordering meat in a restaurant and the croissant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff. So, what do you think, by the way? I know that I've got emails from a lot of listeners to this show, and they jumping in at the beginner level. If you're a beginner at French, do you have to start at the beginner level of your audiobooks, or can you jump in level 2, 3?
That's a tough question because, again, define the French beginner. If you are a beginner in French, but you speak fluent Spanish, I would say, skip level 1 because I take a lot of time to explain very clearly the French logic. Something that kills me is all these audiobooks, not these audiobooks, well, actually, without audio, but all these methods that explain French in French. Like the beginner student is going to understand anything, okay?
Crazy.
Or this method that assume that everybody remembers the 1 year of, grammar logic that they had in school at one point, okay?
Right.
I don't do that. So I know that for English speakers, the fact to do all these agreements in French, that, the matching of the subject and the verb, the matching of the adjective with the noun, all this, it's easy on paper, maybe. You can understand what needs to be done. But to acquire the reflex to do it is something else entirely. And not only do you need to really understand the logic so you know what you're doing, so I explain everything really clearly, really assuming that the person in front of me does not have had any grammar, does not know what a noun is, what an adjective is. I re-explain pretty much the English grammar to put it in perspective for the French language. And then I give a lot of repetition, but within the context of the story. So you're not only, repeating sentence like, I don't know, le ciel est bleu, le soleil est jaune, things like that. You are learning all these adjectives, since it's my example, within the context of a dynamic story. And that makes the difference, because
I still think you're going to kill everyone off at the end, by the way.
Maybe.
It's because I've been reading crime books by Cara Black lately, so I'm just assuming there's got to be some murder.
Maybe, or maybe it will not be the end. I don't know. My method is finished. Like I've covered all the points of grammar that I wanted to point to. I went on this. Since we talked about Kilimanjaro, I am really taking students step by step with with good, same thing in Kilimanjaro. There are moments when you need to rest. There are stations where you need to stop and rest. And my method does that as well. It's to say there's one book that explains all the grammar and really, it's a little bit more work because you have to work your way through the study guide and the exercises and get the grammar. Yeah. It's always illustrated with the story. But then there's a companion audiobook that's much more fun because then it's a much longer story, which is really realistic and question and answers. And you really expand your vocabulary, idioms, and get to practice everything that you've learned so far. So,
I wonder two things. First, I wonder if Mount Kilimanjaro has ever been mentioned so many times in any podcast ever, especially one about Paris and France. But secondly, I got a friend who never trained for a marathon ever in his life. Maybe he ran a little bit. And they say when you're doing a marathon, you got to prepare however many weeks or months in advance. And then the Paris Marathon came. He signed up for it and ran it and did fairly well. He was no athlete or anything. He just put his mind to it and did it. And I wonder if you think that same kind of approach is possible with language. Like someone could go, you know what? I'm jumping in level 6 of the audiobook and I'm going to struggle like heck, but I'm going to make it. Do you think it's possible?
Everything is possible, Oliver. And I think your example is excellent. A friend that is in good shape enough that he doesn't run, doesn't practice, doesn't do anything, and then runs a marathon and is not dead the day after. Great. But is it you? Is it the norm? Also it's. Yeah. I don't know about that. Again, social medias will show you all these people. Yeah, I learned French in 2 weeks. Yeah, but is that the common person? I really don't think so. Okay. Yes, I've met students through my years of teaching because all my method was written actually from what I learned in the one-on-one classes that I did for 20 years in the US. So I learned I totally changed the approach because I learned from my students. It was not me, the teacher, imposing a method that's been hand-on for generation and generation of l'Académie Française and all bigots that will do all these, things. But I learned what were my students' needs, and then I would actually find an approach to meet those needs. So, I met incredible people. I met people who had a fantastic memory. Everything that you said, they would, remember it, be able to apply it, and so on. But was it the norm? No. So, if a student starts with level 6, they will learn some words and so on. But the common person is going to be super discouraged, and on top of that is going to lack some strong foundations. So my advice is always, start with a lower level, review, feel, build strong foundations, and then go for something else, like go for a higher level. What I mean is that to learn a language, challenging yourself is not how you learn a language.
No. In fact, when we were brainstorming about this article, it's funny because the emails, I'm skimming through them as we speak, and we've kind of covered a lot of the points. And even this bit here, you've written, beware of the intellectual in you.
Yeah.
This is sort of the people who love the challenge. You're sort of telling people to shy away from that intellectual, are you?
Absolutely. I have this memory of a beginner student. Well, she was not really beginner. She was a low intermediate student. But the problem for her was actually letting the French sink in, building those reflexes. She got the intellectual message. She got the French logic. She really understood about the adjective agreements, to keep going with this example. But she did not give herself enough time to repeat, to really let it sink in, let it become a reflex to her. And I remember giving her this very precise homework, which was, for next lesson. At that time, I was giving her lessons by Skype. And I told her, write descriptions of things around you, use as many adjectives as possible. And I guess she thought it was too simple or boring, And the week after, she came back with a whole thing, and I kid you not, on French subjunctive. She had went on the internet, studied the French subjunctive, and I was like, okay, not bad, but there's, it's like a train. You can't put, you're going at it backwards. First, you really need to master the basics and really know them before you can go and it's pointless to throw a French subjunctive if before that you were not able to do an adjective agreement correctly.
It's almost like climbing Kilimanjaro without any water, isn't it?
Well, maybe, yeah. It's just, everybody has different ways, and so we're talking about how to hack the language, and I think that's really important to first, as I said, ask yourself what you want to do first, and really stay focused on that. It's gonna be a process, so start by, if you want to speak French, if that's what you want to be able, concentrate on the present tense. Concentrate on those verbs that you are going to be using all the time. Être, avoir, aller, okay? Faire, these essentials, irregular verbs.
Right.
But also make sure that you know your regular verbs. A lot of students, once they understand the logic of the conjugation, they don't train enough. And training is really, really important. So give yourself time to have this information sink in.
You brought something interesting up about whether people want to learn to speak. And I assume that a lot of the people listening right now are the kind of people that would want to speak, because they're going to come to France, maybe they live here. And one of your points was, don't let everything stay in your head. It's a living language. Speak it.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of students are passive when they learn a language. That's kind of how we were taught in school. The teacher comes, does his class. If he has a question, he asks you a question directly. And otherwise, you pretty much be quiet and have everything handed to you. But that's not how it's going to be in real life. When you're in France, if you're sitting down and waiting for the person that you just met, you wait for them to do all the question and be the one, being inquisitive about you, your life, and so on. This person is going to think that you're a selfish prick,
Right.
You really need to return the questions. Like when somebody says, bonjour, ça va?
Yeah.
You don't just answer oui.
Always,
You answer oui, ça va, et vous? Okay. When somebody asks you, where do you live? Où habitez-vous? You answer briefly, j'habite en Australie, j'habite aux États-Unis, j'habite en Angleterre, or j'habite en France. But then you say, et vous? Okay? Because maybe they don't live in France, or maybe they want to tell you that they live in this particular part of France. Communication goes both ways, okay? And
I wonder if, when I moved here, I remember playing basketball with the lads in Paris, and they were curious about me. They'd often ask me where I was from and what I was doing here, and things like that. And at that stage, my French wasn't so great, and I realized looking back, I probably didn't ask them many questions. But I felt also like they were treating me as some kind of curiosity, and they were actually intrigued about being a foreigner, which now I'm realizing that maybe I was being really rude to them in not asking them so much in return. But it leads to something you said about learning a few things sentences and having them ready, things that are relevant to you. Because the amount of times that people have asked me, what am I doing in Paris? What's my job? Where do I come from? Oh, why don't you live back in Australia? It's so lovely there. It's good to have, not to be taken by surprise when you're learning these languages.
Absolutely. There's a sketch by Eddie Izzard, which I absolutely love, where he actually speaks in French and talks about his experience learning French. And I don't have the quote in my head right now, but he says that his first sentence was something like, le chat est dans l'arbre et la souris est sous la table. Things like that.
Dans l'arbre.
Voilà. So the monkey is in the tree, the mouse is under the table. And I mean, come on, how often are you going to be able to place that in a conversation? Check out that. You can find it on YouTube.
I'll link it in the show notes. He's funny. He's
hilarious.
He's a very intriguing guy. He speaks like fluent French. He runs a lot of marathons. I bet he's climbed old Mount Kilimanjaro. I don't know. Hey, but there's something I want to talk to you about. I don't think we talked about it last time. This idea, you wrote an article about the idea of it can be more difficult to learn French when you're in France.
Yes.
That sounds very counterintuitive, but I'm very interested by it because I'm in France and I'm trying to improve my French. What do you mean?
Well, I mean that when you're in France, the perspective of everybody, including your friends and family, is that, oh, great, Oliver is going to have all this opportunity to practice his French. He's just going to open his wonderful little ears and French is going to be all around him and great. But the reality of Oliver and of a lot of people who are in your shoes is that your spouse speaks English. Mm-hmm. A lot of the guests that you meet speak English. And so the reality of your life, although in Paris, is still very much in English. Mm. So, yes, you're exposed to French culture and it's all around you. And if you want to get out of your way and find French friends and so on, like your, basketball buddies and so on, you will find people with whom you can interact in French. But I bet that, on an everyday basis, how much... how long do you communicate in French, would you say?
I tell you what, not very much.
Yes. And that's the problem. You're not the only one in this situation. And so all for you listeners who are, living in France, it's really hard because you may be a beginner in French, but you feel that right away you need to be fluent because people are not going to treat you like any differently. You're going to have to deal with the plumber and things like that. And they are going to expect you because you've been living in France for 2 years, 3 years. Come on, with all this time, you could be fluent by now. But the reality is that if you don't do something about it, if you don't study hard and seriously with a method, with a plan, with a curriculum, you're not going to necessarily progress all that much. So again, question your immersion. You are living in France, okay, but are you in immersion in French? Are you surrounded by the French language? Do you speak French at home? Do you speak French at work? Do you watch only French TV? Are you living in a French bubble? Or are you living in an English bubble in France?
I'm in a bubble, baby. I'll tell you that for free. You know what, though? What I do, and maybe this is not representative of everybody, but I tend to speak at people in French to keep my practice going, right? Mm-hmm. So today is a perfect example. So today I went into my local coffee shop where the French waitress came over, who I kind of recognize because I go there a lot. And she said, "Hello, how are you?" I was like, "Yeah, good. I've just been on holiday." And I just started, it was a conversation, but I just started it. And she probably didn't want to talk about my holiday. Mm-hmm. but I was practicing. I was using the language a little bit. And then on the way to the studio, I was refilling the scooter with gas. And at the one that I went to, they do it for you. So it was me and this older guy who wasn't very interested in anything. And I said, bonjour, ça va? And he's like, huh? I was like, ça va? And he's like, ouais, ça va? And he didn't want to talk, but I did. So I put my hand on the scooter like a loving father to his son. And I was like, oh, this old thing. I took it all the way around France on my honeymoon. And he was there. He was just going, eh? Yeah, okay. What? But I was like, I'm practicing and I don't care. And sometimes, I feel like I don't think he was going to tell me about his holidays, but I just wanted to speak French. So all you guys out there, they might think you're crazy, but like Camille says, speak French. Speak.
Yes. You got to practice. Speak French to your cat. Speak French to your dog. They'll be thrilled. And most of all, you need to get over this, fear of speaking. Go out there, put yourself at risk. I know it's not easy. You're vulnerable and so on. What do you think I feel when I'm being recorded speaking in English live? But you got to do it.
When you come to Paris, we're gonna do a live video.
Yes, that would be.
How do you
awesome.
feel about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's awful. I feel I'm shrieking and really, really scared. But I'll be in good hands, and you lead the way, and you got to do what you got to do.
I gotta say though, Paris is very different to your town in Brittany.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference. There's a lot more cars here. It's probably not as safe. Maybe I should come up to Brittany and we'll do a walk show there.
That would be wonderful. You'll have perfect audio. I can take you to places where, you'll hear the seagulls, but that's about it. The other day I did a live on Facebook and I was on the beach and the audio was just perfect. There was, nobody maybe a seagull in the distance, but that was it. So, yeah,
that's
really nice.
That brings up a good point. All you guys who want to get a taste of what Camille does with French Today, on Facebook, she started doing the live videos. So look up, I think it's French Today. We'll find it. It's
if you type French Today, you'll find me. But otherwise, I think it's Learn French with French Today or something like that.
Yep. And if you on Instagram, I've noticed that you're going on fire there.
Yeah, I'm
growing
really trying to. It's fun, I'm having so much fun there, meeting all these people and finding all the things that you can do on Instagram that you cannot do on Facebook. It's yet another social media, and I'm trying to understand. I feel young and hip,
Yeah. So find her there, Real French Today. That one is on Instagram.
Yeah, that's important. Real French Today. But again, you'll find me.
And jump in the old comment section. You might see me as the Eiffel Tower commenting on a few of Camille's videos and an Instagram post there. But if you want to get one of the audiobooks, if you're listening to this in May, which is when we're recording it, go to frenchtoday.com/earful5. If you're listening in June, do earful 6. If you're listening in the future, then God help you. God help you all. And if you're thinking of climbing Kilimanjaro, on the other hand, any tips there, Camille?
I would say definitely go with, how are they called? Sherpas, like a guide?
Sherpas, yeah. That's probably a smart tip. Smart tip. Okay, on that note, I think we're going to wind this up, Camille. Thank you very much for your time today and
Merci.
for all your help. And we'll see you in Paris.
D'accord, à bientôt.
À bientôt.